Welcome again, everybody, to the webinar today. Thanks for joining us. This is the topic is how agencies are using intent data to win and grow B2B clients. I know some of you on here, I can recognize some names, but for those that I don't know, my name is Christian Madoc. I am the founder of NextBigWin, and we are excited to be partnering up with Diginius for today's conversation. I know in looking at the attendee list, we have a variety of agencies that are joining us today. Some of you I know are pure play B2B agencies and are really looking for probably new ways to better identify demand, build smarter account lists, and improve campaign performance. And I know there's other agencies on here that I've spoken to that are more just interested in getting more B2B clients and expanding your growth offering. So either way, the goal today really is to make this practical. We're going to look how agencies can use intent data, stronger messaging, and Microsoft advertising to help clients reach the right companies at the right time. As you guys know, that we do have the chat open. So if you do have any questions throughout the process, please leave it in there. If we have a lot of speakers today, so if you have a specific question for a speaker, include the name of who you're asking. I may jump in and answer the question in the moment, or we might reserve it towards the end. We will probably have a good 10, 15 minutes or so for questions at the end of the session here. So that said, a little bit next big win. As many of you know, we work and serve a large community of agency leaders who are thinking about growth and business development, new revenue opportunities. And when we're talking about intent data today, we're not really just talking about it as another data source or another media tactic. We're really talking about the bigger agency growth opportunity. And it's really about how you can help your clients understand where demand is building, how to prioritize the right accounts, and how to activate that insights so it leads to real pipeline and revenue. And as I've mentioned, we've got an all-star team here today of B2B specialists. We have Nate Burke, the founder and CEO of Diginius. We have Mike Burton, the co-founder of Bombora, and he's going to help us really ground us into what intent data is and how agencies can actually be using it. We have Carl Alviani, who's the director at Protagonist Studios, who will be talking about turning these signals into stronger content and messaging. And last but not least, we have Tamsin Lawrence, senior partner sales executive at Microsoft Advertising, who's going to walk us through the Microsoft opportunity for reaching professional audiences. And I'm going to be here kind of helping connect the dots as we go. So to get things started, I'm going to turn it over to Nate, who can introduce us to Diginius and frame really why this conversation matters for agencies, whether you're already serving B2B clients or you're looking to grow more of that work. So Nate, over to you.
Yep. Thanks, Christian. So to give a little bit of context, Diginius, we're London-based, moved here 15, 16 years ago from Florida and set up Diginius, and we're an ad tech platform. So we support independent media agencies, essentially in alternative channels. Kind of simply, we look at how do you get better performance out of channels besides, we kind of connect everybody, but besides Google and Meta, how do we build different ways to trade media and support agencies? And we operate a free program where we partner with digital media agencies all over the world. US is our biggest market. And a few years ago, we had a lot of our agency partners ask us, how do we, get more clients? And so we started working at how do we help agencies get more clients? And it turned into kind of really developing our B2B lead gen services. And we had some kind of people we were working with that did this for the large enterprise companies, like your kind of Intels and NVIDIAs and AWS and so forth. And they told us, talk to Bombora. And so we started talking to Bombora and started working with them in how to do that. And then we do that in conjunction. We're kind of Microsoft Ads largest channel partner globally. So we support, a lot of agencies, their underlying clients. And really looking at how do you kind of drive efficient B2B marketing, account-based marketing, and so forth. And so we've kind of done these things and put it in our platform. And so we'll go through that a bit, and then let Carl kind of talk to you about how he does it in his agency to create content to drive compelling things. But in B2B lead gen, it's I started in e-commerce in the US and ran kind of the largest privately held home and garden retail in the US. And e-commerce is quite simple. It's you do your advertising, you get your customers, they transact quickly. Whereas B2B is 6, 12, 18-month lead cycles and it's a lot harder. And so we've been kind of looking at how do you turn that into more of an exact science and do this not just for the big guys, but for small ones, for your agency or for your agency's clients and so forth. Some of the stats that we find quite interesting are that B2B buyers typically purchase from the first vendor they talk to. The issue is they do all their research before they go talk to anybody. So if you're not in the research phase when they're doing the research, it's kind of unlikely uh, to get a deal done. And so the big question is how do you get back early in the cycle to know who's researching when so that you can get in front of them at the right time so that by the time they go out to buy, you've been in their radar and they're evaluating you or your clients and in their services. So kind of for that, I'll turn it over to Mike, who's the co-founder of Bombora and kind of the world's leader in intent data, to kind of talk about how they do this. It's a bit different than the search business um, that we're kind of grew up in with, I mean, Google search and all that. It's kind of keyword based, whereas building that account-based marketing list is a bit of a different approach. So yeah, Mike.
Well, yeah,
Great.
before we get
Great.
into
Sorry.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
before we get into things with Mike, I do want to do a little bit of a poll here just to kind of get a sense of who we have in the audience here. So the question really is, does your agency currently manage, paid campaigns for B2B clients? And so I'll let Mike kind of jump into things here, and then when Mike is done, we'll look at the results here and see what the audience has to say. So Mike, want to take it away?
Great. Yeah, thanks, Christian. Thanks, Nate. And good to be on with everybody today. I think Christian said it best. My job is to kind of get the group grounded in what we mean by intent data, Bombora's particular approach to manufacturing intent data and making it available through Diginius. And then that can kind of like shape the rest of the discussion as we talk about how to take advantage of the information and activate it. But really high level background and context. Bombora operates a cooperative of B2B media companies. So think of this as a big spectrum. And on one end of the spectrum are very large business-focused publications that most everyone's heard of. So think Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Fortune, Forbes, Entrepreneur, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, larger business-oriented publishers. And then all the way down through this very, very long tail on the other side of the spectrum of vertical associations, trade publications, lead gen companies, events companies, et cetera. So across this large spectrum, we think we've compiled a really powerful proxy for the B2B internet, right? All of the places that a B2B professional would go and consume content that helps them do their job better, informs buying decisions, et cetera. And across that cooperative, effectively, for the sake of this discussion, our goal is to monitor companies. We're less interested in people. We're more interested in monitoring kind of aggregate research behavior of a given account or entity, and how much those companies or entities are normally doing research on about 20,000 B2B topics so that we can confidently surface when we see an anomaly or a big spike in interest on any of those topics. So on the next slide, I can kind of walk through a more tangible example of that to hopefully bring it home. So let's say that Bombora has the ability to track the research behavior of Acme Corporation. We'll use Acme Corporation as an example of a company. To us, Acme Corporation is just kind of this big panel or a big kind of think of it as almost a swarm of bees, these anonymous users. We can track what is a normal amount of research for that swarm of bees, if you will, across all of these B2B topics. Let's say one of these topics is network security. We can, using a bunch of different factors, understand when there's an increased level of consumption of the topic network security by those users that we've tagged as Acme Corporation, right? We can see if they're coming across that topic more often. We can see if there's more unique users at Acme Corporation consuming that topic. When they do come across that topic, we can see if there's more intensity to that research, whether it's that network security is more prominent in the content, or whether it's that there's a slower scroll time, a longer dwell time, all of those things. We can see if they're actually consuming the content. And all of that goes into this model to make a simple prediction. Is Acme Corporation more interested in network security than they normally are? And so the co-op gives us this kind of ability to monitor all of these companies, their normal consumption of research on all of these topics, and then we can surface when we see a big spike. So hopefully that made some sense. Feel free to put questions in the chat, and Christian, you can let me know how and when we get to them. But happily to go a lot deeper or to continue to simplify if that's helpful. And I just had one more slide here to just kind of like seed the conversation on, okay, what do I do with the information? That's great. Sounds cool, Bombora. You can track these companies and understand what they're interested in. And we decided to just keep it extremely high level for the sake of this discussion. Think of these as thought starters. So all the way to the right side, and like Carl will probably get into this a little bit, we think about this data just from a pure aggregate level. You have a list of accounts that you care about. What types of topics and concepts are popular amongst those accounts? This can shape how you approach market, how you create content, what pain points, benefits, use cases are going to resonate across your addressable market. So just from a strategy perspective, it can be important to tap into this data to just understand what is important to your accounts right now, and how can you best shape what you have to sell into that conversation and into that interest that's already happening. So think of that as kind of like the highest level use case. On the far left, when we say targeting, we just mean creating a better list for your advertising programs. So a lot of your clients, they probably have large addressable markets. They might have 5,000 or 10,000 accounts that they care about. If they sell to mid-market and SMB, they might have millions of accounts that they care about. So being able to create a targeted list of like, hey, I just want the companies that are most interested in network security right now. This gives you a much more targetable, kind of digestible list that can be more, not only more targeted, but fit a budget that might make more sense for a given client. And then we'll see consistently better performance across any channel that can operationalize the targeting of that account list. And then maybe the most obvious one is sales outreach. So let's say you've used the strategy use case to create some amazing content. You have a team of BDRs or SDRs. There's a lot of great work to be done to packaging that content and that intelligence, packaging the right account list using the intent data, and helping a client facilitate this outbound sales use case. So there's tons of kind of variation within all of these different use cases and tons of ways to approach it. Happy to talk more about it. But from a high level, that's kind of three things you can think about as you start to contemplate how to use the data.
Great. Thank you, Mike. We do have the results from the poll. So it looks like the audience here, about 52% said yes, frequently they're managing B2B campaigns, 13% occasionally. So about 65%, about two-thirds are, and then a good group are also interested but not yet doing it yet. So it sounds like we have a pretty informed audience in how this works. So with that being said, I do want to now turn it over to Carl. Mike gave us really the signal side of the equation, but Carl's going to really get into, better targeting does not necessarily automatically mean better messaging. So if anything, when you have the better data, the bar for relevance even gets higher. So that's really where Carl's going to come in. So I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about how agencies can turn those signals really into stronger content and sharper messaging for better client conversations.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks very much. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to what looks like the exact same page. So that's handy. And also, thank you so much for setting this up. You actually covered some of the ground that I was going to touch on, so that allows me to be a little more succinct. So as Mike was talking about, intent data is a really powerful tool, not just for figuring out who you need to be talking to, but what you need to be saying. And that is kind of my specific focus. So I'm going to start off with just kind of 3 or 4 minutes of context about me that is going to become relevant in a few minutes when I explain this process that I'm developing. So my background, I work in specifically B2B content marketing, but I do not come to it with a marketing background. I'm originally trained as an engineer and then a science teacher and then an industrial designer. which is has taken me into this interesting niche where I was initially working with design agencies, and then more broadly with management consultancies, tech startups, and then large companies that do B2B work of a somewhat technical nature. And it may not surprise you to know that right now, roughly probably more than half of what I'm writing about and developing content around these days is AI or AI related. So if you look in the upper left here, Quantum Black, that's McKinsey's AI consultancy arm. Liquid AI is a startup that does small language models for on-device AI computing. And there's been kind of AI elements in some of the stuff that I've been doing with the other clients. But all of them currently and going back 10, 15 years are all struggling with kind of the same question, which is if you are a B2B service, how do you find great clients? Nate and Mike both touched on this already, which is that you generally don't, right? If you're doing B2B, they are finding you, right? So, I mean, the research that I have seen says a 6 to 10 month buying cycle. I know it's often longer than that. That 60 to 70% of their journey and their research is already done by the time they contact you. They already have a short list, and that makes it critical that you are visible and credible before they get in touch with you. That's kind of the real challenge. Now, historically, the way we solved this challenge was with B2B content marketing. Right? It's got great numbers, right? Compared to traditional advertising for B2B, it produces 3 times the lead generation for a third the cost. That might be padding it, but I've read that online. But generally, there was a formula to it, which was if you can produce a large volume of reasonably good quality content on a specific topic, then you will be perceived as expert, right? Just because for a long time, producing blog posts and white papers and webinars and whatever that were up to a certain standard at a rapid cadence was really hard. And so there just weren't that many. And so you did that, you got to the top of the SEO, everything was great. You've got perceived expertise. That is breaking, right? As I'm sure most of you are probably already aware, there's been the last 5 years, there's been dropping trust in social media, obviously. And then more recently, what we like to call the AI content apocalypse, right? Which is essentially that volume is not a differentiator anymore, right? That formula that I just talked about is accessible to basically anybody who has reasonable facility with modern AI tools, right? So you cannot get by on volume anymore. So going back to the work that I have been doing, part of the reason that it's quite relevant is not only am I talking about how AI is impacting content marketing, I'm also writing about AI implementation constantly. So I've got kind of a front row seat for not just the challenges that we're facing, but also potential solutions. So this is the examples of some of the work that I've done within the past year and a half. This is for Quantum Black. Yeah, so this is from 2024, right? As the new volume of content swells, curation and hyper-personalization will become critically important, right? Well, that's a little foreshadowing for you there. This is another one. This is Liquid AI that I was telling you about. So this is talking about using on-device AI for accelerating e-commerce interactions. There's a huge amount of potential here. And specifically, when you combine these capabilities with intent data, it opens up some really interesting possibilities. And so I only even became aware of intent data and Bombora and Diginius in October of last year. I saw Nate give a talk at a conference in Edinburgh and kind of started connecting the dots and asked him, well, how much have people been using this to actually inform and generate marketing content? He was like, not all that much. And I was like, I would like to give that a try. So this is the kind of the theory that I'm operating on, which is in this post-AI landscape, there are really 2 ways for B2B marketing content to stand out. One of them is through exceptional quality, right? So McKinsey, for example, has not changed its content game because they don't have to, right? They can throw 15 PhDs at a report and interview 2,000 CEOs and produce something that is irreproachable. Literally no one else can do this. And that's fine. So they're set. Don't have to worry about them. This is, however, a very expensive strategy, and it generally requires that you already have a very rigorous content program in place. The second way of standing out is through extremely niche targeting, right? So if you go back to that B2B buying cycle, you as a potential client are going into this with some specific questions. If you're doing research and you find a piece of content that answers your exact question exactly when you have it, whoever wrote it is probably going to go on your short list. And this is a major shift from the past. Up until less than 2 years ago, the question of what do we write, what do we create content about, was generally, I would ask the client I was working for, what do your SMEs want to talk about? Or what does your existing long-term content strategy say we should be saying? And then I focused on the execution part. Well, at this point, if you combine intent data and with AI, exceptional quality and niche targeting are now accessible at scale, right? And I would say this is a fairly new thing. So what we're talking about now is hyper-targeted, high-quality B2B marketing content driven by intent data and accelerated using AI tools. Now, the rules for what great content is have not changed, but the potential for engagement has gotten much better, because the fact is that 6 to 10 to 12 to 18 month B2B buying cycle, nobody wants to spend that much time. And if you can help them shortcut it, then that gives you a tremendous advantage. So this is the process that I have been developing. It's basically been in pilot since about December. It's been in beta since about a month ago. And I will run through it very quickly, and then I will jump over and I'll just kind of show you what it looks like in practice. And you will notice every step it jumps back and forth between AI and human. And this is, one of the things that I have learned working on this stuff is one of the biggest mistakes people make when they try to implement AI in any kind of comms is they want to replace a person. They want to push a button and get a piece of content, and that everybody can do that. If anybody can do it, it's not good, right? So the much better approach is, how do I use AI in order to augment the capabilities of the people here? So this process is essentially, for each client that I work with, I have AI help me build what I call an intent model, right? Which is defining the intent topics that we're going to be searching on, what the parameters are, and what I call the credibility space. What can that client talk about in a credible way? Then humans, and that's me and the client, we validate and refine this. Then we conduct intent lead searches. Then we use AI to enrich those intent leads. Using online research, it analyzes, prioritizes, and it identifies content opportunities by looking for an overlap between what those potential clients are looking for and what we can credibly talk about. Where's that Venn diagram overlap? Then humans conduct interviews so that's me interviewing subject matter experts. While I'm setting content guidelines and goals, we use the result of that. The AI can then draft content. Now, push button get output does not work, but if you have an AI model that has a tremendous amount of context to pull on and very clear guidelines and goals, it can actually produce extremely high quality targeted content, which then has to be edited and refined and rewritten by human beings, which can then be published. And at that point, when you publish it, you already have extremely precise targeting data, so you know exactly who to put it in front of. So that's it for this part. I am now going to switch over to my desktop, essentially. Let's see. How do I do this? If I just do desktop, is that going to also show you guys? Does this all look okay?
That looks good.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk through this as just kind of a series of interwoven use cases from the last 6 months. So this is a client that I piloted this with. They're based in Portland. That's where I am. They're called Brightwork Sustainability. This is an engineering consultancy that focuses on sustainability certification like LEED, energy efficiency. They do a lot of work with data centers, for example, large corporations, commercial real estate, universities, things like that, right? They are a great candidate for expert content as a form of marketing because they were one of the first players in this space back in 2001. It has since become very saturated, and they're having a lot of trouble standing out against all of these newer competitors. But they do have a unique amount of expertise and have worked with some like extraordinary, like they did Meta's corporate headquarters, for example, right? Now, the way I work with this is so I've been developing a series of AI tools, right? So that's custom skills agents. I've got some custom projects set up, and I take their website that gets scraped. I take whatever kind of promotional material they have, and I feed all of that in, and it generates that intent model that I was talking about. And what you get is an onboarding report that looks like this, right? So this is all AI generated. But what it basically says is this is who the company is, this is what their target market is, these are the things they can uniquely talk about, right? This is where they have expertise in content. This is what they should not be talking about. These are the people within their organization who should probably be authors of record. And then it goes through, and this is why I did this. This is the Bombora taxonomy, or it's this month's, right? So this is about 20,000 different topics. They are incredibly granular. And I have a model where I can feed this into that same model that just did the analysis. And based on what it knows about Brightworks, it can then, out of these 20,000, pick me the 12 best and 6 alternates. These are the intent topics that we should be searching on. So for Brightworks, based on what I told you, net zero, decarbonization, carbon accounting, scope 3 emissions, life cycle assessment, right? If you are in this space, these are like, well, obviously that's what we should be searching on. These are kind of secondary ones. And so the next step is I sit down with Brightworks and we go through this and we decide, okay, no, it's going to be these 12. Do not look at these, and it gives sort of explanations as to why. And then it also makes recommendations as to what industries, what areas, what sizes we should be focusing on. Right. This is another one. This is for Liquid, the on-device AI one. So their topics: edge computing, small language models, sovereign cloud, agentic AI. Right. So this starts to make sense. You take this information, you go into, so if you've not used the Diginius front end, this is what it looks like. So this is for Brightworks. And when you configure it, you just plug in the topics here. You identify the industries that you want to be searching for. They work with a lot of industries. So there's 66 chosen here, mostly large companies, mostly kind of in the Anglosphere and Northern Europe. And then every week you get a report, and the report looks like this. So these are their top 10. This is actually an identified growth sector for them, which is retirement housing, retirement community developments, because you're getting, well, I won't go into a lot of detail here, but there are a lot of areas where sustainability is of growing interest and concern. Universities, especially around this time of year, there's kind of an annual cycle where they all start looking at sustainability numbers. So there's a number of school districts and also large universities that are doing this. Based on this, I can then feed this back into another model that I've developed that then analyzes these and ranks them, right? So this is from a couple of weeks ago. Again, lots of higher education. This was Columbia, Warwick, Apple. And then it prioritizes them, right? So it enriches this by going online, researching these companies. Why is it that they're showing a surge of interest in these topics? And how good of a fit are they for us? And then it kind of ranks them, right? So in this one, Columbia, this medical center, right? These are kind of the top ranked ones. And then this, I think, is maybe the most interesting part, is then it says, okay, this is the content you should create. So Article 1, the spend-based scope 3 trap. How interesting is that to you guys? Not terribly, but that's the point. That is a very specifically relevant topic for a very small group of potential clients who are obsessed with this question right now, and Brightworks is extremely qualified to talk about it, right? So that's number one. Hospital sustainability starts in the capital plan, right? This is the kind of content that it would never in a million years occur to them to develop themselves. And that's what makes it really valuable, what hyperscale customers are about to ask their colo providers. And so then each week they get a report like this, and then they can decide what they want to execute on. In Brightworks' case, they have already a pretty robust BizDev process where their founders and co-founders will hold outreach to the heads of sustainability at different companies, and it works really well for them. So they don't do a lot of this. What they mostly do is look at that list of people and then just ping them on LinkedIn and then start conversations, and that's fine. These get customized for each client. Right. So actually this is from several weeks ago. Their current one has less of this and more of here's who you should talk to and here's what you should say. But here's another one. So this is Rava, which is the Rice AI Venture Accelerator. So this is an AI startup accelerator and incubator associated with Rice University. This was one of their weekly reports. This one's interesting. Utility company, utility company, utility company, utility company, utility company. Turns out that utility companies are freaking out right now about the growing demand that's being brought on by car electrification, data centers, and they are trying everything they can to try and get out in front of it, because bringing new capacity online is very slow and very expensive, and so they're looking for efficiencies, and it turns out AI has a lot of potential value there. And so utility companies and energy companies have venture capital that are now investing in AI startups so they get early access to the technology. Right. Well, here's what we did with that. They decided they wanted to go ahead and do the content angle. So I went back into this model and I said, give me 10 interview questions for, in particular, the board member of Rava who used to work for venture capital at Shell, who knows all about this. And so we were able to interview, did about a 40-minute interview. We took the transcript, we feed it back into that same model, and it gives us an article. That's what it looks like. What energy companies and utilities get wrong when scouting AI startups. And I will say when it came out, it was about 80% of the way there, right? And this is something that I've been doing for 15 years. Now, it wasn't perfect. It had some AI tells. It needed some restructuring. I worked on it for about a week with the expert, but what we ended up with was something that was extremely high quality, and they went ahead and published it. And oh, this was supposed to take me to, well, let's see, I'll bring her up. So this is the author of record, right? You can see she used to work for Shell. And this, here, that's the article. And that's what it looks like. So here's another example. So this is one that I did with a much smaller agency that works with creative, like ad agencies and so on. So there's another one. What gets lost when creative agencies scale and how to get it back, right? Something happens at the 40-person mark. So this is, and this might be relevant to the audience here, which is if you are a marketing agency, an ad agency, any kind of creative, as you grow and you hit about 40 people, the culture starts to shift. They work on that a lot. And it turns out that writing this kind of content is extremely relevant for their audience. So that's pretty much it. Like that's the process. What's interesting about it though is like for this one in particular, we were able to then target it through LinkedIn ads, promoted posts, and specifically give it a list of these are the companies we want to make sure see this. And then based on that, we also did a lookalike audience, and that got us something that was very highly targeted. What's really cool about it, though, is that the click-through rate on this article was about 3.4, 3.5%, which if you're in this business, then you might know that that is, well, for B2B marketing content in general, 0.6% is a good CTR. So this is about 6 times that. For LinkedIn single image promoted posts, standard CTR is about 0.09%. So depending on how you look at it, there's either a 6 times or a 40 times baseline engagement rate, which is pretty extraordinary. Also, the dwell time was over a minute on this on average, which is 5 times anything that they had ever had up to that point. The problem, I cannot tell you that this then immediately resulted in new business for them because buying cycles are so long on stuff like this. But if what you're looking for is engagement rates, this is an extremely effective way of doing that. So that's it. Can I turn it back over?
Yes, please.
Great.
Thank you, Carl.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Let me share my screen again. All right, give me a thumbs up if you're seeing my screen now. Oh, yeah, better get. Hang on, guys, it's getting the pinwheel of death here. I think we're okay. Maybe not. Sorry,
I can answer the one question there. Do you always do as many as 12 topics? 12 is the max that Diginius can take right now.
Why it's not allowing me to advance. Let's see here. Oh, keeps going back to this slide. We may need to just stick to this view for right now. Apologies, everybody here. But we do have another poll that I would like to run here. So let me that's the first one. Let's go back to this one and launch this poll. I don't know what's happening with this poll. Sorry.
On the best question as well, Christian, for me to find
Yeah,
out all about
I
Microsoft
know.
advertising.
Something happened when we switched here. The poll's not showing up, unfortunately.
No
Um,
worry.
all right, we might have to skip this poll. So, but that said, I do want to turn it over to Tamsin, who is going to walk us through really the Microsoft opportunity for agencies trying to reach professional audiences and B2B decision makers. So I'll let you take it away, Tamsin.
Amazing. If anyone does want to drop in the chat a little nugget on their current use of Microsoft advertising, I would be interested to hear. So, Christian, I might need you to go through the slides for me because I don't think now I can click
Okay.
through
Yeah.
from this view. So we can start. Oh, I'm not sure why that's
I'm
coming
not
out like
sure why
that.
that's popping up either, but
Okay, that's more, we can just start. Well, I'll just begin. It's very exciting to be here with you all today. So, as Christian said, I'm Tamsin. I am a sales exec at Microsoft. I work in very close collaboration with Diginius, who are our largest channel partner. And if we are thinking about intent data, like Micah spoke about today, and then some really high quality B2B marketing content, like Carl was speaking to, you might be looking for a platform to run it on. And, it might be a while since you've kind of heard from us at Microsoft. It might be your first time hearing from us. So I wanted to spend probably about 8 minutes taking you through some slides on why Microsoft. We might not be the first partner that you're going to be thinking about when thinking about B2B, but we should be. We are very uniquely positioned in this space. And I know a lot of people say that. So hopefully I can leave you with some nuggets today to go away and have a think about. As we all know, and sort of Mike and Carl have touched upon it, and Nate earlier, if you need to reach professionals while they are working, the people that are really driving decisions in businesses, they are constantly connected now, but they are also more selective and more harder to reach than ever. So the real challenge is, how are we going to get their attention when they're making business decisions? And this challenge, as we can see, from this slide that we're currently on, is accelerating because AI is fundamentally reshaping how these people are working and consuming information. And adoption is happening faster than any technological shift we have ever seen. So as a result, attention is concentrating now into fewer and more trusted environments than ever before. And if we hop onto the next slide, what is really important here is that Microsoft isn't just participating in this shift. We're kind of helping define it. So you can think about from our investments in AI infrastructure to growing Copilot presence, we are building the products that the professionals that we're talking about today are relying on every day, which gives us a really unique vantage point on where their attention is moving to. And even more important, I think, like AI isn't a standalone experience for us. It is getting embedded across all of our media properties. So when we're thinking about search, email, browser, content specifically, which we'll touch on today, these are all becoming more assistive, more contextual, and more relevant, kind of than ever before, which means the environments themselves are now becoming a little bit more valuable to users, and we're now able to collect so many more signals across all of these experiences. And if we move on to the next slide, on the content side of things that we touched on, I know Carl's touched on, some really fantastic content and where you kind of want to push it. People are getting more informed every day. And MSN is an experience that we are seeing getting very deeply reshaped by AI. We are continuing to rely on some of the world's top content providers to source our news, but it's getting delivered with way more precision in deeply personalized experiences based on new AI capabilities. So for brands, this is going to mean instead of interrupting kind of users through their feeds and throughout their day, you can now show up in kind of moments where people are actively engaging with content and making decisions. On the next slide, if it will work, this is a bit of a short video on MSN. Okay, maybe not.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it pop up,
That's
unfortunately.
fine. I mean, it was a little 1 minute video, saved me a minute. So it's a little 1 minute video, pretty much talking about kind of like the endless scroll that we are in,
Every
Oh,
day, you're
We
hit
got
with an
it.
endless
there
scroll
we
of
go.
news, memes, videos, and updates. But how much of it actually matters? Introducing the new MSN, where AI isn't just changing how you interact with content. It redefines what content means to you. Now, every headline doesn't just tell one side of the story. MSN's AI curated gems weave together a spectrum of viewpoints, related stories, and key insights, transforming content into an experience that stays with you. Your MSN feed evolves with you, learning what matters, adapting in real time, and giving you control. More than text, more than news, now featuring videos, podcasts,
The Blue Ghost lander has reached lunar orbit.
live updates, and interactive insights, all in one seamless experience. The new MSN helps you reach the next generation of consumers so you can build lasting relationships. Your brand will be remembered and rediscovered time and time again. Smarter, faster, more engaging, empowering everyone on the planet to be more informed, entertained, and inspired. This is the new MSN.
Amazing. Thank you. What a jazzy video. I love showing that. It's definitely a little bit more impactful on like a bigger screen and sort of music. But if you haven't sort of experience the new MSN experience, I would definitely recommend it. It's very cool. So you might be thinking, Tamsin, that's great, but how is this all going to help me connect with professionals? So on the next slide, if I can take us to, the answer comes down to something only Microsoft can really offer. And this is going to be a combination of scale, context, and precision. So we're thinking real professionals in real work environments. We're going to go into these three pillars. We've got our Windows and Edge distribution. We're then going to go into signals and then a little bit of measurement. So we'll pop into these three now. In the next slide, we will start, and it all starts with distribution. And I'm going to break this down because this is actually something that's very difficult for others to replicate. And I think it is super cool. Microsoft is pretty much embedded directly into the flow of your workday. We have over 1 billion Windows devices, and Edge is the default browser on those devices. So we are not competing to kind of attract attention in that way. We are already very present when the workday is beginning. And that is creating a lot of multiple natural entry points, whether it's the desktop, the browser, or the MSN feed, as we've been talking about, so that professionals don't have to go anywhere else. The browsing experience is very much starting with us. And because these interactions are happening across Windows, Edge, MSN, Copilot, even LinkedIn that we've been mentioning earlier, we are able to sort of, I suppose, capture now a much richer set of signals, not just what people click, but how they're behaving, what they're researching, and what context they're in. And then when you combine that distribution with the signal depth, the outcome we're seeing is kind of very straightforward. A lot of kind of what Carl was talking about, a lot of stronger performance. So we're kind of planning to reach now users in very high attention, desktop first moments in environments they trust, which hopefully ultimately drives better conversion outcomes. And on the next slide, with that presence comes some real scale. MSN is the largest desktop news destination, which you may not have been aware of, with a really highly engaged and high income audience here. So you're getting both that reach and that quality. And on the next slide, sorry, how annoying. You keep hearing me say next slide. I apologize for that. It's like a ongoing ping. But what really matters now is who you're reaching and when. And these are very much decision makers. And I love some of the stats that sort of Carl was talking about earlier. You know, you have a 41% higher chance of reaching professionals who are decision makers on MSN anywhere else, you know, than anywhere else online. And they are active during work hours, engaging with content in a really lean in mindset, like Carl was talking about that content. They are researching, they're evaluating, and they're acting upon those decisions in those times. So these are incredibly valuable and traditionally very hard to reach by other media companies that don't have this type of distribution. Then if we layer all of that we've just spoke about on top of then our first party data, we're combining intent, behavior, and context signals that we can collect across our entire ecosystem. You know, I don't think we do a good enough job at shouting about how large our ecosystem actually is, but if we're thinking Bing, Edge, LinkedIn, so on and so on, you know, targeting is becoming smarter, more relevant now, and more effective than ever before across our platform. On the next slide, only Microsoft, and this is something as an ex-LinkedIner myself, I spent 6 years at LinkedIn before coming to Microsoft. I love seeing these types of slides, and I love the examples you were sharing, Carl, about how imperative LinkedIn has been in a lot of those cases that you were talking about. You know, only Microsoft can also now combine that signal layer with LinkedIn identity. So you can reach specific companies, industries, roles, and seniority levels now with confidence. And that is a level of precision that is simply not available anywhere else. And it delivers some really fantastic impact. We see 16% lift in click-through rate, 64% increase in conversion rates when clients are adding LinkedIn segmentation to their campaigns on our platform. And you can also see here where we're laying in that groundwork for the Bombora signal intent that we also discussed earlier too. And just sort of coming to our last two slides now, we obviously don't stop at delivery. We're wanting to improve impact as well. And this is all of this, you can work very closely with your Diginius account managers and your Diginius account team to help strategize here, build out these campaigns, and specifically work on measurement. We have a full breadth of measurement capabilities that are going to help you understand those real outcomes across the journey, from impact in brand metrics, for example. You know, we can partner with Kantar to some, you know, to very actual business results. So my final slide to kind of bring it all together, I hope this has just been a bit of a nugget for you to think about Microsoft in this kind of B2B and professional landscape. You know, if I step back, this is kind of where everything is coming together. Is Microsoft performance metrics for native content ad? Let me come back to you, April. Let me finish this off and I'll ping back in the chat. Thank you for your question. For B2B advertisers, as we've all spoke about today, you know, I think the challenge has always been the same. How do you consistently reach real decision makers, not just their proxies, in moments where they're actually researching, they're evaluating and making choices. And I think what we are offering here is a very different approach. Instead of chasing those audiences across very fragmented environments, you're meeting them where the work is actually happening and doing so in very high intent moments throughout their workday. What I think quite here is this doesn't only apply to B2B. You know, this audience itself is exceptionally highly qualified, high income, high engaged audience, and they're in a very focused mindset. This may also be very powerful opportunity for many premium brands as well that you are talking about in the retail space, for example. So I will close it there. I hope this has been helpful for a bit of a nugget of why Microsoft, why B2B in our ecosystem. And please do reach out to your Diginius team and counterparts because they'll be able to help you strategize with this. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you, Tamsin. So I think, Nate, this probably feels like a good place to bring it back to Diginius. We've talked about, intent data, messaging, Microsoft activation. Can you now walk us through how Diginius really helps agencies manage their ABM lists, use intent data, connect it maybe to the CRM, and push those audiences really through these media platforms?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, we always liked Microsoft, particularly. I mean, in B2B, we tip not just in B2B, in any segment, we typically see probably 20% better performance on Microsoft than say Google. And so we've been working on that for years on how to drive that. But B2B, it's been significantly different, both historically and currently. Now, especially that they're tying the LinkedIn audience data into it, so you can target on Microsoft LinkedIn audiences, so you can go out and do all of that. And from a company's perspective, if like hyper targeting is something we've always performance marketing is kind of what we've always been about, and how do you get much significantly better performance, not 2 or 3%, but 30, 40, 400% better performance. And for example, one area is if you build your account list and then you have those accounts, or you have that data in your CRM, you enrich it however you do, and then you want to target those people, you can do it through ABM targeting or CRM targeting. So for example, CRM targeting, agencies that work with us, we give them the tools. They don't, there's no, it's a partner program. So we kind of enable them to build out their services and all that. So they can load the list, connect the CRM with their platform, and then connect it to all major ad platforms. So Google, Meta, Microsoft, TikTok, and advertise to exactly those accounts. And then with the intent data on Bombora, you can go into our platform and you can kind of pick which accounts you want. And we give so agencies can get used to how to use it. We give all our partners the ability to kind of test it, and if they want to scale it up, they can license the data kind of with the Bombora terms. So we go to the next slide, how we kind of work with agencies is we have technology. We give our partners, our agencies that we work with, our technology. We give them financial incentives. So we have incentives, say for Microsoft, where if you want to test new ad units or you want to create a new account, we can give vouchers to your clients. And then the support. So every agency gets a dedicated account manager so that we can talk them through, work them, and strategize. And we also have a lot of relationships. So if you're an agency and you say, hey, I want to advertise you this, I want to run it, my client doesn't have content, so we can say, all right, talk to Carl. He can help, you guys create the content, or your client create the content, and then go from there. But I guess the main thing from our perspective is that the partnerships that we have, I guess there's a question right there. Is it in Canada? Yeah, we work globally with both Bombora and Microsoft, and other partners like TikTok and so forth. So it's a free program. You basically onboard and we give you the access, and then we're kind of like a independent holdco. We work to kind of roll out programs and technologies to optimize and get better performance. So yeah, it's Canada, it's US. US is our biggest, probably our biggest market, but we work in over 60 countries in all sorts of different languages. And yeah, when we have specific use cases, we can bring in people from Bombora, people from Microsoft. One of the use cases that we didn't talk about that I think is quite compelling is like, let's say you have a client that's interested in using this data seriously. We can go back to Bombora. We can say, hey, this is a company in this sector. We need to develop their profile. And it could be for agency activation, or it could be, say, for monitoring churn of their customers and getting so we can go back and say, hey, here's a list of topics. We want to go back and look at the last 12 months of topics that their customers were researching based on deals won or deals lost. We can build a profile exactly to what works for that company and their clients, and when they're throwing up churn signals or when their competitors are throwing churn signals, and then you can work out a plan to activate media based on that to those customers. So what you can do with it, there's a lot of different ways you can use the data to whether it's the sales team, advertising, building an account list. We can do that activated across Microsoft. We're launching next quarter, kind of in conjunction with Bombora, some account-based marketing. We'll be able to activate media to those audiences kind of programmatically. And so yeah, there's a lot of different cases there.
So Nate, before we get into the Q&A here, I know you guys have an opportunity to chat with the agencies that might be interested in learning more about the program. You want to tell them a little bit about what could happen as a next step?
Yeah, basically just have a call with one of our account managers. We'll go through it. There's no strings attached to it. We've been doing this for quite a few years, and we're kind of, I believe, the largest in the world at it. And so we work to help agencies develop new offerings, new pitches, support, give the technology and the media channels to kind of grow the agency. And it's really about performance. How do we help you get better performance so that you shift budgets and activities to drive higher levels from mainly alternative media channels. And you can test it on your own. We have a lot of agencies that test it on their own account first, say, hey, how do I help my own stuff? And then how do I roll it out to my clients? But yeah, we're here to help um, develop those tools and those operations and the business models and support and anything that comes along at all our teams deal with. And then we take the more complicated issues up to, like, say, the teams we work with Microsoft or Bombora and so forth.
Sure. So we have a couple of minutes left. I mean, I can stick around if I don't know if the panelists, but if anybody wants to stick around for a couple more minutes, if there are more questions. I did have another question here for Nate. Is there a certain type of agency that you find that is the best fit for a Diginius agency partner program?
It's independent media agencies. So we work with, I mean, anywhere from freelancers up to fairly good sized independent agencies. Kind of typical is maybe 10 to 50 staff, but we've got a good number that a couple hundred and yeah, so but it's independent. So we generally support the independents, not the global media holding companies as much.
Great. Let's see what other questions might have come through here. There was a question earlier about, do you have creative best practices at different levels of intent?
Yeah, I just saw that one. I personally specifically don't. What I do though have is in those intent models when it creates the weekly reports and it's going online and doing research in order to validate those surges. And it's like, and so in those reports, they're typically 6 to 8 pages long. There's a fair bit of detail, and as it's analyzing a particular lead, it will say online research shows that they're probably interested in this because of this, and it will make recommendations that bear that in mind. So if the supplementary research shows that this is actually probably just something that they're casually interested in, it might knock it down the level of priority. Whereas if there's no, they actually just made an announcement about a merger or a release on this, whatever, and that's probably where that surge is coming from. You need to write this article right now, and it needs to be very targeted on these things. So yeah, that is folded in, but it's not something I do. It's something that's encoded in the model.
Great.
And I'd say in relation to that too, like how the end clients, the end companies operationalize the data and the practices very depends on the operational capabilities of the actual company. So some may use it for marketing, some may use it for cold email, some may use it for SDRs, some may use a combination of all the different things. So you kind of what we do is we work with the agency, say, okay, what's the best way to activate it? Because it can be very different in the internal operations of a company. And then often once companies start really working out how to use this data, they will change their operations quite a bit to take advantage of better sales and marketing techniques.
Yeah, that's why when I set this up, there's kind of a month of model customization, because each client that I work with gets a different weekly report that is kind of fine-tuned to feed into their existing marketing process. And that's actually really, really important, because if you give them a whole bunch of recommendations, they don't have the capacity to act on it. It doesn't matter.
Great. So we're at time here. If there's any other questions, I don't see any others coming through here. I know we did get a question earlier about we will be sharing the recording to this along with the slide deck as well. And then certainly if you're interested in learning more about Diginius, as we mentioned, learning about their agency partner platform, you can reach out directly, and we'll make sure in the follow-up emails to include a link to connect with them as well. So yeah, this has been great. Thanks to our all-star panel here. Sorry for the little tech difficulties that we had there, but I think we got through it. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining, and appreciate you all.
Thanks, Christian.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks all.
Great. Okay. Thanks a lot.